Okay, so this is going to be a short video for 2.5. I think we've already covered most of this, but this is putting everything together. So again, just to hit this real quick here, sinusoidal is a fancy word for both sine and cosine. So it's really trigonometric function. So we call it sine, whether it's for sine and cosine. So we're going to deal with sine to start here, okay, but you can interchange cosine there. It's the same thing. So let's review some things real quick here, all right? Again, now we put a format here where we have different colors for the letters, okay? So first of all, A, I think we know that already. A, amplitude, stands for amplitude, okay? And what is the effect of it? I think we've done enough of that. That is going to change how far above the midline it goes and how far below the midline it goes, okay? Now, let's look back here. I think we know what D means, okay? D, when it's outside the back, okay, that is the vertical shift. Okay, and I think we know that. And the other thing I'd like you to know is plus is up, minus is down. I think we've covered that. In the middle here, we have C, okay? C is something called the phase shift. Now, if you remember, everything inside is counted backwards, right? So the only thing about C, if you remember, is if that's a subtraction sign, okay, so subtraction is going to move right, and addition, okay, is going to move left. So just counterintuitive there. I think we covered that. Now, here's the part I need to go over with you, is B. Okay, so B affects the period. Okay, now, it's really called the frequency, right? So B is really the frequency, if we do it. So B is the frequency. And if you remember, the way we find the period is equal to 2 pi divided by B. Now, I have to point out something to you here real quick. In order to have this correct, I don't really like this format. What I need you to think about is the way this works out, the way we taught you, is for this to be a sine with a B pulled out here like this. The B has to be outside. Now, if the B is outside, the C is the phase shift. If it's not outside, you have to pull it outside, and I'm going to do some examples of that. But here's what I'd prefer. If this is the case, this is what we want, to have all these work out nicer. Okay, we don't want the B on the inside, even though it looks prettier. Okay, and that's the main emphasis of this lesson, because I think we know the rest. So let's look at it here real quick. Okay, so if I look at this one, okay, for example 3, if you notice here, okay, and the first thing is cosine is sinusoidal. It's the same thing. It doesn't matter. All right, so what is the amplitude? The amplitude is 2. Now, what is the frequency? The frequency is 2, which makes the period what? I think we've done this a couple times, right? The period is equal to 2 pi divided by B, which makes the new period pi. Okay, so it's going to be shorter. Now, let me talk about the phase shift. This is not the phase shift because it's not in the right format. So if you're given something like that, you have to factor it out. So here's what it becomes. Really, I want to rewrite this with the 2 out here. Okay, now when I pull a 2 out in front, that means I'm dividing this by 2, okay, to move it out there, and I'm dividing this by 2. So this is some just basic algebra, I guess, sort of doing reverse factoring, if you want, a little bit. So I'm going to bring a 2 out in front. So now that you see this 2 brought out in front here like this, can you see that if I would distribute, I would get 2x, and the 2 would cancel, and I would get 3 pi. Why is that important? It doesn't have anything to do with this. It doesn't have anything to do with the period. It's still 2. It does affect the phase shift, though. Do you see that you have to pull it out to have that be right? Okay, so that's a good high school trig topic. So what is the phase shift? Even though you might think, right, it's just this, it is 3 pi over 2. Okay, that would be what the phase shift would be. Now, in this case then, what does that mean here? That would be a phase shift, because if we look here, this is a plus, just hit on a couple things. That means it's going to go left, if you remember, and it's going to go left, and remember this phase shift is measured on the scale. It's going to go left this far, or in this case, this far. Okay, so again, it's not really magic. You have to look at the scale. In this case, that would be what looks like 6 blocks. Okay, Now, quickly maybe to sketch this, I guess, just as a review, right? Do we remember that cosine starts high, goes low, and comes back up? So, right, the original 2 pi version starts there, finishes here. In the middle, it's down 1, and then in the other quarters, it's at zeros. So I think we're getting familiar, I think, with that to start. Okay, what does the 2 do? The 2 moves it up here, still through the 0, down to 2, back here, back up to the 2. So that's 2 cosine x. Now, what has to happen now? Because of this period change, all this has to occur more quickly, right? I have to do that full cycle, which hopefully we're getting more familiar with, by pi, which means if I start here, I now have to finish by here. And the way we set up your scale normally, we do it, if we rehearse a little bit more of this or had more time, we would talk about this being broken into 6ths and 12ths, so that the 3s, 4s, and 6s all work out. Either way, if we do it, can we kind of agree to the symmetry where those are the high points? Halfway I'm at the low point, the other quarter I'm at the 0. So here I would have this, right? And then what happens here, all of these points, because of this phase shift here, would go left 3 pi over 2, which means they all come back this way. Okay, so this one would move to here. I'll make them just a slightly different color. To there. This one would come to here. Right, everything moves left 6 blocks, if you want. Okay, and therefore the end result would be that. Okay, so I don't think there's a whole lot new there. What's missing from this would be a shift up and down, right? So if there's a plus and minus in the back, you would do it. All right, so I think I'm just going to kind of let that be the lesson, because I think we know the rest. I'm going to ask you try the assignment page and the odds, but the big key would be to take this 2 here and remember that it has to be out here by itself outside the parentheses, which is going to affect this one if you're going to stick with our normal part. So we have this, and then we'll have some delta math to review.